You see the messages coming out of the United States, out of the White House, and the mind truly boggles. I mean, it really does. I know that a lot of people have a very high regard for President Trump as a leader and as a negotiator. And I respect them, and they may well be right. I'm just very, very confused as to what the aims of this war are. Whether the US and Israel have the same aims, and whether the way the war is being currently pursued is going to lead to peace and harmony in the region. It's very difficult to see.
When you compare this war with the Suez Canal conflict in 1956, how much similarities do you see?
Oof. I mean, Suez was the last gasp of the colonial era. I mean, it was the end of France and Britain as global powers.
Yeah.
A desperate humiliation for both countries, and a disaster for them. Do I see parallels with Iran? No, I don't really. I mean, it's such a different world now.
How do you see it differently? Because a lot of people compare those things.
Do they? It's interesting. No, I mean, I think it's different. I mean, you've got different actors for a start. Then you had Egypt on the rise, Arab nationalism in the person of Gamal Abdel Nasser, immensely charismatic leader, and it crystallized a moment for the Arab world where they could throw off colonial powers. It was an electrifying era. This is different. Iran is not an Arab nation. Its neighbors are very, very hostile to it or very, very suspicious of it. Israel has made inroads in the area in making diplomatic relations with some of the countries and relationships with other countries that we don't really know about as well. I think parallels in history are interesting, but generally flawed. There's a great line of the American writer Mark Twain that history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And there may be something in that. Maybe this rhymes a bit with Suez, but I don't see it as a parallel. I think the times are different. In particular, the global powers are different. And America remains, I mean, for all the dislike that it sometimes creates and the hostility and the talk of its decline. I mean, it remains an astonishing economic and military power. I mean, its ability to project military power is breathtaking and unique. So I think it's a different situation from Suez.
So since President Trump has said he might end this war in a couple of weeks, as he's saying, right? Do you see this war ending anytime soon? Because I see this as like Iran has more of the upper hand on choking the Strait of Hormuz. They won't win by missiles, that's for sure, but more of controlling that canal, that Strait of Hormuz. So in your opinion, like, where does this stand right now?
Look, I mean, the short answer is I don't know. And it's very, as you know, and all our listeners and viewers know, it's very hard to read President Trump's mind. It could well be tomorrow he says we've won and walks away. I mean, and leaves everybody with the Strait of Hormuz still shut and oil at 180 a barrel and gas and fertilizer. I mean, it's excruciating. It's absolutely excruciating. What was? Remind me what the aim of the war was, because I don't know what it was.
True.
If you leave broadly the same people in charge in Iran, and they are able to rebuild their capability and they are able to close the Strait of Hormuz, I mean, yeah, I mean, sure, you've knocked them down for a while, but the people that I speak to in Israel say that they think they'll have to go back to war over and over again if that's the case. So the war hasn't ended then. I mean, I don't know, but come back to the point. I don't know what the aims or aim of the war is or was. That's not to say that I think it's good or bad, right or wrong. I just don't understand it.
I feel like a lot of people might have to say it's for the oil, but a lot of things might differ in that point.
I've never really understood that because, I mean, first of all, yes, I appreciate America does import a certain amount of oil from the Gulf, largely to what they call balance its own oil production. I mean, you know, remember, America is the single biggest producer of oil in the world by a huge amount now.
Yeah.
And whereas back in, 1973 and again in 1979, the last two big oil shocks, you know, there was a genuine question over supply of oil because the countries that produced it were able to reduce supply and expand supply when they felt like it. Oil is now a globally traded commodity. You know, if America wants oil, it goes and buys it. So, I mean, I know sometimes President Trump writes, he's, I just go and take the oil. But I mean, again, if it wants oil, it just tends to buy it now. And I mean, I remember hearing the same thing, again, a sign of how old I am, about when Afghanistan was invaded, or you know, when American troops went into Afghanistan, and I didn't really understand that about oil either. I was talking about oil transit then, because again, oil is freely traded. So maybe it's about oil, but I don't really understand the argument myself.
Do you see this kind of war affecting the petrodollar system? Because a lot of geopolitical analysts that I've talked to, they're pretty much, even economists, they're pretty high on like this might weaken the dollar in the long term.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that argument made, and in a sense, I mean, there is clearly a weakening of the dollar. There is more international trading going on outside the dollar system, but it quite often reminds me of the sort of thing that says, you know, oh, America's in decline, America's down and out. It's almost wish fulfillment. The dollar is still hugely important as a trading currency. It is in relative decline, but it's still the currency that everybody wants to hold, in particular in times of crisis. And, you know, whilst there's been some small weakening, I think, in the sale of treasuries, it's still, you know, it's where the money goes. Well, again, it's a bit of a wait and see, but I'm always a bit sort of, always a bit not hostile, but just suspicious of immediately jumping to arguments about the weakening of petrodollars and the weakening of the dollar as a trading currency, because it has survived so long and the American economy is still so vital.
Yeah.